and welcome to another episode of Round Robin. I'm Robin McCormick, the Communications Director for the City of Hampton, and today we're going to be talking about a special event called the Hunt for Hampton History. I have two guests with me today, Luci Cochran, the Director of the Hampton History Museum, and Mike Cobb, Historian and Curator. So first of all, could you just give us a little overview on what the Hunt for Hampton History is?
I'd love to. It's a wonderful day where we're inviting families, everyone who both lives in Hampton, as well as people interested in the history of the area to come. It's really a historical showcase. We're going to have a lot of hands-on activities. We're going to have a lot of demonstrations and people really demonstrating not only what they did, but also, and the focus, is really about occupations and businesses in the community. It's called Hampton at Work. So it's going to be focusing on not only what they did in the community, so we'll have everyone from crab pickers to fishermen to people that worked at NASA. We have NASA coming and doing some wonderful activities, but that's just a brief example. We really are representing the whole spectrum of work.
Now, I have to confess, I've never been, but Mike, you've been doing this. This will be the 6th year?
This is the 6th year for the Hunt for Hampton History, which is a unique program, and many communities are copying it. It sort of sprang from a small idea, then grew quite large. It began in the Convention Center, the Hampton Convention Center, and now we have moved it to the Hampton History Museum, one of America's great museums.
Now, I sort of thought of this, and excuse me because I know this is wrong, but I thought of it as almost an Antiques Roadshow, where if I had lived in Hampton for 70 years and had stuff in the attic, I could bring it in and show it to you. And I know that's a piece of it, but it's not really what the event is.
The focus was just that when we started. That was the idea, but it grew out more than that. It began with looking at the neighborhoods, and we started looking at other aspects of Hampton history. We had one year we did World War II, so it sort of grew from the initial idea to much more. And as Luci said, this time we're focusing on Hampton at Work, and after all, our history is about working people. And so it's going to be a good opportunity to see a piece of Hampton history.
And we really want it to be an educational experience, but also a fun experience. So you really can do a lot of things. Your family can do things. We're going to have wonderful performers. We'll have musicians that are doing historical music from throughout our history. We're going to have things like a representation of the Customs House that started here, and we'll have those people involved, as well as people that are building the contraband houses that were first built here. We'll have a replica of that. For us, it's about showing the history, but also making it interesting and entertaining, and giving people a chance to touch and feel things that represent not only Hampton history, but then how we built Hampton, which was, of course, through people going to work every day, as Mike mentioned, and those great industries that help shape Hampton as well.
So Mike, tell us what a few of those industries are.
One of those is very much busy today. Patrick's Hardware down on West Queen Street. If you go into Patrick's today, it's like stepping back over 100 years. In fact, Patrick's has been in business for over 100 years. And Carrie Patrick and company will be there talking about the business of selling hardware. And of course, in the early days, it wasn't just nails and hammers. It was hay and coal and much more. In fact, he still sells hay and coal to this very day. So Patrick's Hardware was be one of the features of the Hunt for Hampton history.
Great. And the seafood industry obviously is one of the things that built Hampton from more than 400 years ago to where we are today.
It was Crabtown.
Mm-hmm. And oysters were big too?
Oysters were big. In fact, the symbol of Hampton at the turn of the century was a giant oyster pile. As large as this building is, and it existed near the Crown Plaza Hotel. It was part of the J.S. Darling and Company business. It was on postcards. In fact, it made National Geographic. And that story and many others will be featured on this special day.
Oh, I didn't see that, but I know you have that picture in the museum,
yes.
and I love it. But Crabtown is an interesting, Maryland thinks that they have the blue crab, and nationally I think they've been able to market that. But I still think if you're looking for a symbol for Hampton that has endured, in my mind, the blue crab just has to be right up there.
After all, Hampton High School.
Well, now, they fight with us all the time. They think the crab should be red. We've got an ongoing feud on Facebook. What are some of the other key businesses or industries in Hampton?
Well, there are many. We have Russo's Bakery is going to be there, and if anyone remembers that experience, going in Russo's and getting a brownie or a bear claw or something, that memory will be relived on this very, very great day in Hampton. We also are going to be looking at blacksmiths. We're going to be looking at banks, and we have a very special guest, Charles King Mallory, who was an attorney, and Charles King Mallory will be wandering through the gallery talking about law in antebellum Hampton. We're going to have antebellum ladies there with exhibits on sewing and other types of activities. And Luci mentioned the contraband, and that's going to be very special in that this cabin is going to be recreated on the outside of Hampton, outside of the museum. And very importantly, when you go inside that, or when the contraband folk went inside that during the Civil War, for the first time they had a taste of freedom. It was the first step towards Emancipation Proclamation, and you're going to learn how they lived and how they worked towards their freedom.
Now, I thought mostly this was a tent city sort of thing, but you're saying they did develop more permanent structures or more stable structures.
Very much so. By 1864, these were actually very, very nice cabins. There was a mill set up behind where St. John's Church is today, and the lumber was milled from slab logs, and the cabins were very orderly and clean, and it was small towns, one of which was outside of the town of Hampton today, and the other was near Phoebus, where the golf course is to this day.
Interesting. Now, speaking of parts of Hampton, Phoebus has a pretty interesting history. Is there anything that we'll see represented from Phoebus at the hunt?
We'll be looking at some of the Phoebus businesses there, and Sam's Restaurant, which we all remember very, very fondly, and who can forget that experience? And we're going to be looking at some of the other places there. And Phoebus begins during the Civil War as a Union camp, then becomes this town. And very interesting about Phoebus is it's really a northern town, because many of the people who settled it were from the north after the Civil War. So it was a little distinct from Hampton. It has a special flavor, Phoebus.
Buckrow will also be represented. You have the wonderful flavor of the beach area as well. So that community has come together, and they're going to do a great display for us as well.
Well, it's interesting because Buckrow now is kind of a neighborhood beach, or we go there for the day, yeah. But it was very much a resort back in its time, or really, unfortunately, two resorts because of the segregation, but yet very popular, an African-American resort there. It wasn't called Buckrow now, help me out.
It's Bayshore.
Bayshore,
it was called
that's right.
Bayshore, and it was during the days of segregation. It certainly was, and we still get people who come into the museum with those memories of this time in our history. And an offshoot of that, of course, at the turn of the century, Hampton was a resort area with great hotels. There were 4 major hotels at Old Point Comfort: the first Hygeia, the first Chamberlain, the second Hygeia, and the Chamberlain that stands today, which is as good as it ever was. And along with the hotels was the beach resorts and tourism and much more. Hampton, from the 17th century to this very day, was thought to be special because of its natural attributes being close to the sea.
And that's why I'm here. That's definitely my favorite thing about Hampton is you just can't lose. It's not just that we have water, because all of Hampton Roads has water, but we have access to it. You know, you can enjoy everything from the bay to the creeks to seafood. I mean, it's just such a fabric, a part of our fabric of our lives. What were you going to say, Luci?
I was going to say that what also makes this unique, and you mentioned it earlier, it's not only this broader picture, but it's also the individual stories. There's individual people that worked here, but then coming and sharing those things you have in your home that you said earlier will really demonstrate, where you worked or where your father or grandfather worked. And you can tell your story and be a part of the collection that is Hampton. We'll archive everything. It'll be accessible online. So in a way, you become a part of the fabric by coming. And then you can see what other people are bringing and what they have in their home. So to me, it really allows people to become a part of the Hampton story, whether you moved here 5 years ago or your family's been been here since the 1700s. So,
well, that's what I like, that you have really these two audiences, the people who have things to contribute, and then the come-heres like me who really want to hear the stories and get people talking, or get Mike, who's a wonderful storyteller, to explain all kinds. There's just so many different stories you can tell about Hampton's history.
So really this is going to be a festival. It's not just an event. It's really, it spills out into the streets. We're actually closing Queens Way. It's going into the building next door, the Healthy Families. It's such a big event that you could literally stay hours. It's a large festival, both indoors and outdoors, but it really has a little bit of something for everyone.
Great, and tell us the date and the times again.
March 24th, from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the evening. And we're looking forward to you coming to downtown Hampton to the Hampton History Museum.
Great. And where are you located?
120 Old Hampton Lane in downtown Hampton, right next to St. John's Church in the Grey Goose Restaurant.
So really, you could also make sort of a day of this. You could go to that, you could go to St. John's, you could, walk along the waterfront. I mean, it's a really good opportunity for people who don't. One of the things I say, when you live in a tourist area, or an area that draws a lot of tourists anyway, you forget to do these things, How many people out there have not come to the Hampton History Museum because you're waiting for somebody to come in from out of town or something like that? This is a great way to say, hey, did you say this was free, by the way?
Yes, it is. And of course, not only can you come to us, then you can enjoy a lunch at one of the great restaurants. We'll also have some food vendors on site, but it's something that you can spend the whole day visiting downtown Hampton. And as you said, you have a little bit of everything. The waterfront, great restaurants, and then this fun activity for your family.
Yeah, and you can't beat free, that's for sure.
Robin, very importantly, we have a special Civil War sesquicentennial exhibit, An American Turning Point, Virginia in the Civil War. And that will be available to our visitors on this very interesting day. And this exhibit includes Stonewall Jackson's watch, Jeb Stuart's pistol, and much, much more. Come and see it.
Hey, that's great. And I will say, this is very exciting for me personally, because Lucy is my first repeat guest on Round Robin. She was here a couple weeks ago talking about that Civil War exhibit, which does run through June, is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of reasons to come out, and a lot of history and stories and fun hands-on experiences for the kids. It sounds like a great event, and I will actually get out there this year. It should be a lot of fun.
It'll be a casual stroll and a family day in downtown Hampton. Great.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up? Mike, what's one of your favorite stories that people don't know about Hampton?
One is that the banker at the turn of the century, Lucian von Schilling, when he took his money, when he moved it, he often had a person follow him on the opposite side of the street. And Lucian was of German descent, and the guy who accompanied him had a German Luger raised at ready, and he followed Lucian down the street with that German Luger ready for action. See, this is what I mean. There are so many colorful stories. If I could just hang around with Mike,
Exactly.
For a week or so and learn all these great tales.
Hampton's
But you will be there.
I will be there, and we will unweave those stories. Myself and many others, with the many voices of Hampton, will unfold. And more importantly, people coming to visit us that we have not as yet met are going to tell us stories that we have not heard yet. That's right. It is such a growing collection. Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Lucy, for coming by and sharing these stories with us. And I look forward to seeing you on Saturday, March 25th.
Exactly.
24th.
March 24th at the Hunt for Hampton History.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching this episode of Round Robin. I hope you'll come back.